Welcome back, Sebastian here. So next up in my series of videos looking at each Formula One team after roughly the midway point of the 2023 season is Williams. So first taking a look at the drivers head-to-head so far. So of course we have Alex Albon, who's in his fourth year season of Formula One, having a very good season, and rookie Logan Sargent. Having a bit of a tough time this year, as the numbers would suggest. So in points head-to-head, it's 11-0 in favor of Albon. So Albon's been pretty opportunistic, getting quite a good few good points results this season, and Sargent yet to get any points in his maiden season so far. Race head-to-head, not great either for Sargent. It's a clean sweep 8-0 in races where both drivers finish. Taking a look at average finishing position, 11.6 for Albon and 16.1 for Sargent, which is about over four positions, which is definitely a much larger gap than Sargent would want. And I believe it's probably one of the biggest gaps between teammates in F1 this year. Quali head-to-head, not very good either, 12-0, with an average qualifying delta of 0.631. So about 6.5 tenths of a second roughly on average in favor of Albon. So definitely not a good look for Sargent in either the races or in qualifying. And I think it's something he's definitely going to want to work on in the second half of the year if he wants to continue in F1 next year, I think. Just for fun, looking at my average power rankings, 7.8 on average for Albon and 18.5 for Sargent. So I think Albon's been slightly above average, and I think Sargent's on average been one of the weaker drivers in F1 this year. Expected points, so this is based on my model that I made, race model that I made, 8.61 for Albon. So Albon actually has more points than he would expect based on his starting position, which is definitely saying something given that some of the races their tire wear has been absolutely awful this year. And for Sargent, he would be expected to have around 2 points. So definitely less than that. So that score 3.7, which is the second largest in the grid. So that basically says that the gap between Albon and Sargent is the second largest teammate gap over several race parameters in the race. Now looking at their qualifying gap and how they've progressed in qualifying this year, first drive races, so Bahrain to Miami, their gap to pole position was on average 1.386 seconds, which was 8th fastest. Looking at the data from races 6 through 12 in the dry, we've had quite a few wet qualifying sessions, so there's not as much data. 1.189 seconds, so the absolute gap to poles dropped a little, but they dropped to 9th behind Alfa Romeo. So that's something that they're going to try to, in the second half, try not to fall further back down the order. Now looking at Williams this year in context with their seasons in the past, 2020, no points, 10th in the Constructors. This was obviously the second year of their big rebuild after 2019, where they basically bottomed out. 2021, 23 points, a really good year by their standards. Of course, got that podium courtesy of George Russell, and got 2 top 3 starts as well as a front row start technically in the Belgian Grand Prix that year. 2022, 8th, bit of a drop back with the new regulations, and 10th in the Constructors' Championship. But this year, 2023, through 12 races, they've already surpassed their points total from last season, so I think definitely good progress on that front, and 7th in the championship. So, of course, for them, like all the other teams I've mentioned, realistically, they're going to be fighting for that 7th place for the remainder of the year. I do think that Williams does have a slight advantage in some respects. They have Albon, who's been a very good and very capable driver, and I would say of those drivers in those bottom 4 teams, I think he's probably the best performing driver right now. Of course, it's hard to say since he's had probably 2 very weak teammates to compare against, but nonetheless, I think he's been doing very well. The other thing is that the Williams this year has been a very inconsistent car in terms of pace. There'll be tracks where they could arguably be 6th or 7th fastest, and there's other tracks like Monaco, for example, where they'll be 10th by a very large margin, and they're basically miles and miles off the pace. So because of that low downforce nature of their car, very aerodynamically efficient, there will be some tracks coming up that should suit them. Monza should suit them, and barring Albon not losing his appendix again, I think that's definitely going to be a race that they're going to be looking for points. Obviously, for some of the other ones, like more high downforce ones like Singapore, they're probably just going to be holding on and hoping for just a good, solid race finish. But nonetheless, I think a good season so far for Williams, definitely a good step forward. And for them, it's really going to be fighting for 7th in the Constructors, the goal for the rest of the year. Thank you so much for watching. That's all for today's video, taking a look at Williams. I'll be back in a couple days looking at, let's see, who's 6? Alpine, yes. So Alpine, looking at Alpine in a couple of days' time. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.